Welcome to New Canaan Library, and good afternoon. My name is Heather Cimino, and I'm so happy to see you all here this afternoon. It's cold, but at least it's bright outside, so spring is on its way. So today we have a wonderful program for you. We have best-selling author Amity Gaige here with Daisy Alpert Florin. They will be talking about Amity's book Heartwood, which is a read with Jenna pick, and it was an instant national bestseller. This thriller had me speed reading because I wanted to know what happened next, and then I would go back and sort of read the details. But I think the journey of the missing woman and the search and rescue, and learning about the Appalachian Trail, and the fact that it had so many characters and they were beautifully braided together, and then a little surprise sprinkled on top. So I thought it was a wonderful book. So I look forward to hearing the conversation. Amity is the author of 4 novels, Oh My Darling, The Folded World, Schroder, and Sea Wife. Sea Wife and Schroder were both New York Times notable books. And Schroder was also named Best Book in 2013 by the Washington Post. Amity was also awarded in 2018 the Guggenheim Fellowship in Fiction. So she lives in West Hartford, Connecticut, and with her family, and she teaches creative writing at Yale University. And Daisy Alpert Florin is the author of My Last Innocent Year, and she is the recipient of the Catherine, I'm going to say it wrong, Gurfine Writing Workshop at St. Lawrence University, and she's a fellow in the Bookends Novel Revision Fellowship. She's a native New Yorker, but we have her here living in Connecticut now with her family. So we've got a lot of local associations here. In addition to local associations, we have our bookstore, Elm Street Books, which is right here in New Canaan. And Eve, our steadfast partner, is here selling books, both Heartwood and Sea Wife, as well as Daisy's book, My Last Innocent Year. After the discussion, we're going to have some question and answer time, and then if you're interested, we'll be doing a book signing. So I thank you again, and please help me welcome Amity and Daisy.
There we go. Oh, we didn't discuss which chair we would take.
But they're so pretty. I love these chairs.
Beautiful.
Is this like mustard?
Yes, it is. A bright mustard. Like a gold, not
Gold.
what's that? Like
Saffron.
yeah, Heinz, the Heinz ketchup. Heinz mustard. Anyway, thank you for coming. We were originally scheduled to chat at the end of January, and there was a big blizzard. Hands scuttled those plans, so we're here today. So wonderful to see you, Amity, and your wonderful book.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Daisy. Thank you, Heather. And thank you, Elm Street Books, a beautiful store. And thanks, New Canaan, for coming on this beautiful day.
So I think we were going to start with a little reading. We're going to hear from Valerie, our missing hiker.
Yes. Yes. If it's okay, I'll just talk about the 3 main characters first. May I ask who has already read Heartwood? Oh, I love it. I love it. It gives me the impression that like everyone in the universe has read my book.
Yeah.
So this is great because also, it can be like a kind of big book club discussion at the end. I love hearing your impressions and your questions that you didn't get resolved in your book club discussion. But for those who haven't read it, we want you to read it, and I don't want to spoil it for you. So I'm also going to just explain it to you. So there are 3 central characters in the book, and then there are numerous other small, minor characters and voices in the book. The first character that we meet is Valerie Gillis, and she is a woman who's in her 40s. She's a nurse. She's taking a bit of a break from her job to hike the Appalachian Trail. And she's only about 200 miles from the northern terminus in Maine when she disappears. And we don't know why or what happened to her. But we get her point of view through letters that she is writing in her journal that she brought with her to her mother, who's like her beloved mother with whom she's very close, as she kind of waits for rescue. The second character we meet is Lieutenant Beverly Miller. She's a Maine game warden, and she is in charge of the search. And the Maine game wardens do often go searching for people because there's 17 million acres of woodland in Maine, and Mainers often get lost. And they find them. They've got a great record of finding lost people. But in this case, my character, Beverly, is having a very hard time finding Valerie, and time is running out. And the third main character, another woman named Lena. Lena is a 76-year-old woman living in a retirement community in Connecticut that is completely ripped off from my mother's retirement community in Bloomfield, Connecticut, called Seabury. And Lena is kind of a square peg. She doesn't get along that great with everybody at the retirement community, but she is a fiery, passionate person. And she kind of becomes a sort of armchair sleuth in the case by doing a lot of online research. And so Daisy had suggested a reading for me from, I'll start with Valerie's voice. Dear Mom, the first thing I should say is that you were right. You didn't want me to hike the Appalachian Trail. Mothers have a sixth sense. Their love is a cult. You argued that I'd be miserable. Only 1/4 of Appalachian Trail thru hikers achieve their goal. What if I made it nearly to the end, you said presciently, and something unexpected happened, like a turned ankle or a bad case of giardia, and I had to quit anyway? Thousands of people section hike the trail, completing a couple 100 miles every summer. Why not me? Why not? Because hiking the Appalachian Trail isn't a reasonable thing to do. Anyone who wants to walk 2,000 miles in a row does it because they find beauty in the unreasonable. All that misery, that's the point. The high probability of failure, that's motivation. You had a bad feeling, you said, and you were right. You were right, as usual. People have romantic notions about hiking the Appalachian Trail. I had romantic notions about hiking the Appalachian Trail. The truth is, the journey involves a lot of moisture, always being wet, mostly in the form of sweat, but also rain. In June, it rained on us for 7 days straight. Rain for a day or two is no problem, almost a novelty. But rain for 7 days? Strange rashes grow in the armpits and buttocks. The feet become pruned and cadaver-like in the boots. Nothing dries. You're trapped in crowded shelters with other wet and miserable beings. Another form of moisture is tears. Sometimes out on the trail, I'd get so frustrated and tired, I'd just sit down and cry. My heels were cracked. My knees throbbed, especially on the downhills. Who was I kidding? These are 42-year-old knees. They weren't supposed to be flexed for 7 or 8 hours straight, all the while carrying a heavy load. Since I'm small, my packed look unusually large and burdensome. People laughed at it, even after I pulled everything non-essential out. Goodbye, paperback and personal locator beacon. Goodbye, compass. My trail brother, Santo, was used to my cathartic crying jags. He'd just settle down and have a snack or look around. After I wound down, he'd come and offer me his hand and pull me back up as huge as I am small. Come on, girl, he'd say. I'd say, I'm trying. Do or do not, he'd say in his best Yoda voice. There is no try. But every time I was on the verge of quitting, every time I made peace with the decision to quit, to say goodbye to my tramily and wish them well and walk away and find some feather bed and be done with it, I'd reach the next shelter just as the woods were growing rosy with dusk, and somebody on the same journey would be building a campfire, the evening air full of fireflies and cricket song. And I would realize once again that the act of walking while carrying the weight of my pack had run all the sadness out of me, the sadness for myself and for the world. And at that moment, I was totally without stress, confusion, or agitation, and that I was perfectly, blamelessly whole. The trail transformed me, and I can't say, even now, that I regret it. After all that I've undergone, all that has been done to me. Thank you.
Nice choice. Yeah, really nice. Really nice. Oh, I'm just struck by something in that reading where she said she has had romantic notions about the Appalachian Trail, and I have to ask you, do you have romantic notions about the Appalachian Trail, or what was your relationship with the Appalachian Trail, if you had one? What kind of brought you to this story?
Well, I really, really respect people who hike the Appalachian Trail, but I have zero desire to do it for myself. I am a cream puff. However, I did get out there and did some research. So I hiked in 2 sections of the Appalachian Trail. I like to say I hiked long enough to smell bad. And also to understand that I would never be one of the 25% of people who complete the trail. So I hiked 2 sections, one in Maine where I wanted to set it. The setting is so important to the book. And I can talk about that separately. And then another one in New York State for 4 days and 3 nights. And wanted to get to meet people, and I did. I met some wonderful folks out there on the trail, and it's much as Valerie says it is, where people they'll talk to you, and there's nothing in between you and them. There's no possessions or status. Everyone's doing the same thing. I think people really bond with each other out there. One of my favorite people I met was this lady called Real. She's 71 years old. She was section hiking the trail, which means, you do a little bit every night. You don't try to do it all at once. And she was with her friend who was also about the same age. And Real was called Real. You get a trail name when you're on the trail. And Valerie's is Sparrow, which she says is in the very beginning pages. And Real was named Real because she kept it real. And she really did. And she also smoked mentholated cigarettes
While hiking?
While hiking.
Oh, wow.
And
She kept it real.
and she had a great laugh, and she was very funny. And I said to her at one point, I asked her why she was hiking the Appalachian Trail. She's also from the South, and she said, better than sitting at home waiting to die. And I was like, that is a really good reason to do, to hike the trail, to do anything.
And she didn't make it into the book, Real, but yeah.
Well, she did in spirit. Yeah, she did in spirit. I appreciated. I do so much research, and it's more the vibe of the people that you get that you try to capture. And so, all I really need is that kind of understanding of that vibe, and then I can invent the rest, So in that sense, she is in the book, yeah.
I mean, it seems like the kind of book where you would have to physically be out there, at least for a short time, to really inhabit this world so brilliantly. But going back to Valerie, I wanted you to read that section in part because Valerie's very funny, even though she's going through something, very dark and dire. She is lost, and we follow her through that experience of being lost. But I also want to ask you about mothers, because she is, her voice is framed in these letters to her mother. The book starts with Dear Mother. That section did as well. So I guess I wanted to know if when you started to write this book about a woman being lost on the Appalachian Trail, did you know it was going to be a book so much about mothers and motherhood and people who choose to be mothers and people who don't, and people who are estranged from children and close to children? So maybe you could talk us through that a little.
Yeah, sure. And I think that also goes into the question you want to talk to about genre and like what is this book? But I will say that when I start to write a book, I start with a story, and I want a story. I want a good story. I want one as a reader. But then just as important to me is what Marilyn Robinson, who was a teacher of mine in grad school, would call aboutness. And what is it about under the surface? So what's about, and then that's that sort of intangible thing you can't put your finger on, but that you're experiencing as you're reading. It's a story, but it's a story that, means something, makes you reflect or meditate. And so when I'm writing a book, I'm very conscious of picking both those things. So, why mothers? I didn't realize I had never really, my other books, Sea Wife, I'd say is sort of a marital drama, family drama, and Schroder was about father and daughter and kind of a liar, so I really wanted to touch motherhood. I am a mom myself, so really in a lot of ways I feel like Heartwood's a lot about daughterhood. So it was just a personal instinct to have that be the aboutness. And once I have that aboutness, then it's important for me to know it, because as I'm telling the story, there's a sort of magnetic quality to the topic, and I start thinking, well, what's this character's mother like? Oh, well, what's this character's relationship with her mother like? And of course, we know that those mother-daughter relationships are as individuated as a fingerprint. There's so many, many kinds and so many forms. And it was fun because I explore so many different kinds. So Valerie she writes to her mother because they're like best friends, and that does happen sometimes. And then we have Bev, who is, her mom was, not that present, not that helpful. And that made Bev she had to grow up early and take care of her siblings. But it also made Bev who she is, like a really great, warden and searcher. And one reflection I get about, and neither Valerie or Bev have children, I get reflections sometimes from people who appreciate seeing a woman who doesn't have children, who kind of mothers the community. And I think that's a really, there's kind of an unsung hero in the community, is sometimes you need that, the community needs that kind of mothering or nurturing. And then we have, of course, Lena, who you don't know this for a while, but she's estranged from her mother. So that's like a stressed relationship. So it's a range, and it's a diversity of different relationships. But for me, I think I'm always looking for some sort of personal insight. Like everything in this book is invented. Okay, except for Seabury. I sold a lot of things, but a lot of it is invented, but there's a deeply personal aspect to everything as well. And so sometimes when I'm writing, I stumble across a kind of insight or truth that is personally healing to me. And I never know what it's going to be. And in Heartwood, there were many of those little moments. And one was later on with Bev, when she's at her mother's bedside because her mother's sick, and she's understanding. Well, I wanted the dream mother, but I didn't get it. Very few people do. But you got the mother that you needed. And she made you who you are, and she made you strong, and so that was a really great insight for me too,
I love that. I know the section that you're talking about. I love that section. Let's talk a little bit. The book is really fun. I know a lot of you have read it because he has these different voices, but then there's also interviews and news, news articles and these tips that come in on the tip line. And then, of course, Lena is very online. So there's a lot of like online discussions too. So that's really makes the book really fun. I also listen to it on audio. If any of you have listened to it on audio, it has all this whole cast of characters, which is fun. But you were telling me that part of that structure came from the idea of the tip line. Because we do get tips that are called in, and like, not a spoiler, but like not all of them are, helpful in the end. But can you talk a little bit how the voices came out of this idea of the tip line?
Yeah, sure. So it's going to be kind of a longest answer because I got to start with the real life event that happened with a woman in 2013, and her name was Jerry. She was in her 60s and hiking the Appalachian Trail, and she got lost in this area of Maine, and she was a retired nurse, and unfortunately she wasn't found in time. And and I learned about her story in a book, a nonfiction book, called When You Find My Body. And it was about how Jerry, when she was waiting for rescue, she would write letters. She was writing letters to her husband and her daughter, kind of like, thanking them, saying goodbye. She was a nurse, so she understood, what was happening to her sort of biologically. And I was so moved by this. And of course, Heartwood is not a novelization of this story. I was really just taking Jerry's story and trying to figure out why it moved me so much. And so I kind of borrowed from Jerry the fact that she was a nurse, which I did not know would be as significant in the book as it would be, and where she got lost, which was this part of Maine that you can't even fathom how dense the woods are. You can't even see somebody standing right in front of you because of all the like saplings that are kind of growing up at our head height. And the floor of the forest floor is all completely unstable. It's like a great spot for a mystery. Terrible place to get lost. Wonderful place for a mystery. So the book, When You Find My Body, kind of talked about all the different tip lines that came in when Jerry, and they didn't find her body for like 2 years. So during that period of time, people were wondering what happened, and there were so many different theories. People who were like, I just saw her at a bookstore in Boston. I saw her at a nail salon in Minnesota. And I was just as interested in the people who called and the veracity of what they were saying as I was almost in Jerry. Someone goes missing. There's famous cases we all know about. And you're fascinated. And you're like, and why can't they find her? And it becomes a bit of a preoccupation for people. We're all rooting for that person to be found. So these stories have this ripple effect upon all of us. So in the book, I wanted to represent those tip line phone calls, and some of them are funny, and some of there's like one by a psychic who's and she comes so completely wrong. And apparently, I think the stat is in the book, but it's something like only 2% of tip line phone calls are actually useful. Yeah. But oftentimes they solve the case. So I really enjoyed having that multi-vocality. I didn't want to write a straightforward story. You guys have read that a million times. I wanted to jump to a lot of different voices, and my hope was that those little jump cuts and pivots would keep your interest and would kind of lead you from one section to the next. So that kind of puzzle format of the book was a big part of the inspiration and the joy of writing it. Yeah,
it makes it really fun to read because we were talking about this before. We know on page 1 we're hearing from Valerie, who's lost, but at the same time we're following the search for her, right? So it's like not a mystery in that way of like she doesn't show up, we don't find out about Valerie. So sort of how you have to keep the tension of us wanting to find Valerie even at this, while we know where she is. And I asked you if Valerie was always a voice in your book, and you said yes. You never thought about like hiding her till the end. So maybe.
Yeah, no, I mean, exactly. You know that she's still alive, and you hear from the lost person and you hear from the searcher, but the lost person and the searcher can't hear each other. And that's the sort of dramatic irony of the book. And I also think that's what keeps people reading. It's like, oh, she's gonna connect at the right in time, and it's one of my favorite compliments for sure, is like, reading this book made me late for work, or I stayed up all night reading this book, because I'm sort of like, sorry, like I'm really not sorry.
Awesome, yeah.
Because that's wonderful. That's how immersed I wanted readers to feel, and I think that's part of why I did not deliberately set out to do that. It now I understand. Yeah.
Yeah, it sort of subverts the genre, like thriller, but it still is so engaging. Let's talk a little bit about Bev, because she has like more page time than Valerie, or I don't even know. I haven't quantified that, but she's a very important character, and I want you to read a little section that we're talking about with Bev. She's a female game warden, which is a big deal. I guess there aren't that many women who are doing that kind of work. And I loved what you said about neither Bev nor Valerie are mothers in this book that's so much about motherhood, but Bev, her work, this kind of caretaking that she does through her work. And Valerie is, of course, a nurse. So that was interesting. But when Bev is reflecting on a conversation that she had with her mother when she told her, that she had gotten this job, and she has an interest. I thought this was an interesting exchange between these two women.
Yes, thank you. This was Daisy's idea. I actually have never read this section aloud, so excuse any stumbles. This is Bev. Back in my truck, I turn on the ignition and jab the radio channels. Commercials, sugary songs. I opt for silence. Finally, I listen to my sister's message on my cell. Hi, Bevy. It's me, Kate. So Ma has taken a turn for the worse. She wasn't conscious at all today, and the doc came in and asked about the, oh, honey, we need to talk. Me and Faith, we need your answer about the DNR. Faith and I don't want her hooked up to machines. We want to change the directions to do not resuscitate, but you need to agree. There's a pause. My sister sighs. You're not thinking straight. You can't save Ma this time. Ma's not going to bounce back. She's not going to wake up and say all the things you want to hear. You've done so much for her. You've done everything you could. You've done your duty. You've got to let go, Beverly. It's okay to let go now, okay? Call me. I drive south underneath another clear sky, those stars that don't care. I turn south. I'll be home by midnight. I remember the day I was offered a position in the warden service. It was one of the happiest in my life. I wanted to share the excitement with everybody. I got the idea I should drive down to Leominster and tell Ma. It had taken years of work to achieve, to gain a position as game warden. Candidates have to pass a physical fitness test first, which weeds out a quarter of each group, then a written test, which disqualifies another half. If you pass that, it's on to the oral board testing your applied knowledge, including how to ID hundreds of kinds of flies, fur, plants, or scat, how to clean, load, and shoot a gun, how to use diplomacy so you never have to shoot it. Next is a psych exam, a background check, and finally the colonel's interview. You pass all those, and you may or may not get yourself a chance to earn a modest living saving lives in the woods, which was, when I graduated with a master's in wildlife conservation from UMaine, what I wanted most in the world. You'll be one of two female wardens in the state? Ma asked, frowning. There must be a reason there's no other women in that line of work. Well, I explained, such work wasn't for the faint of heart, whether you're a man or a woman. Not everyone wants to work outside in all weather, blizzards, rain, nor can you be afraid of wildlife. Did she remember, I asked, how I used to catch snakes in her garden? And, well, there's want and can, Ma said, visibly distressed. I know you want to do this, Beverly, but will you be able to? Why would they hire me, Ma? I asked sincerely if they didn't think I wasn't able. She clamped her mouth shut. Then she looked at me and asked, do you dislike being a woman, honey? Do you wish to be a man? She waved away my answer, because women are women. It's just so unusual for a woman to want to drive around chasing criminals. But it was your father. It was your father treating you like a boy that did this. But I'm happy out there, I finally blurted. I'm my very happiest in the woods. And I will always love you, Bev. I will always love you. She grasped my hand. You'll always be my special angel. Then she dissolved into tears. She was afraid. She was afraid of many things. She was afraid for me. She herself didn't know why. She was a conventional woman who aspired to a sameness of days. I was intensely protective of her. Even now, as I voice these words, disloyalty turns my blood cold. But there was a point long ago when I realized that the feeling I had standing atop a mountain, face to face with the horizon, or wading in remote rivers, was a satisfaction and a peace beyond explanation. The backcountry is my mother.
Yeah. Oh, so much there. You know, there is something about Bev that kind of scares her mother, right? And I think all parents maybe have that, you know, when you realize your child is not you. Wonderful. We love Bev. And I think that the backcountry is my mother. It's almost something that we could think of Valerie saying. I mean, she's writing to her mother in the backcountry, so that connects these two women on, you know, opposite sides who never meet. Anyway, who knows? Okay, so big thing that happened with this book was that it got picked for the Jenna book club. So that's like a really big deal, and you got to be on TV. And I want to know, I know this is not your first rodeo, and you've written other books, and to sort of be chosen in this way, like how did that happen, and how did it feel, and how did you get ready to be on TV? Were you terribly nervous, or were you just cool as a cucumber?
Oh my God, I was so nervous. Yeah, when I actually sat down for the interview on the Today Show, and I felt like I'm not nervous. And then they're like 3, 2, 1, and then you're like, wow, there's 2 million people on the other side of that camera, you know. And
Is it live?
It's live. Yes, you get really used to being able to kind of edit your thoughts with a podcast or an interview or something like that. Not here, but so Jenna was amazing, and she's really is as warm as she seems on TV, and she just put me at ease. And I fumbled my way through the first question, so she just cut me off, and she's like, anyway, moving on.
She's used to talking to writers, right?
Well, she said to me something kind of funny afterwards. She's like, well, you're unusual for a writer. You like to talk to people. It's like, I guess, you know, sometimes writers, we don't always know how to explain ourselves. But when I got the news from about the Jenna pick, which is so wonderful because of course she has this incredible platform. I think she truly has great taste. I read a lot of her books, and I love how she takes chances on things too. So I was at a writer's colony called, I was at Yaddo. Do you guys know Yaddo? Or it's like this old, in Saratoga Springs, New York. And at these writers' colonies, if you're very lucky, you have to apply. And then you get a little space where you can write, and people like bring your lunch. It's awesome. And I was there, and I got and also I should say that there's quiet hour. You're supposed to be quiet because you're living with other people, and so quiet until 4. And I remember it was about like lunchtime, and I got a text from my agent and my editor at the same time. I was like, "Call me," and I was like, "This is either really good or really bad."
Wait, and how far, like your book came out in January, so like what month was
No,
this?
my book came out in April.
Oh, your book came out in April. Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah, it came out in April.
So when did you
September.
find out?
So I'm in September. So anyway, I call my editor, and she tells me about the Jenna pick, and I scream, and I'm kind of like yodeling and running around my apartment. I'm like, oh, quiet hours be damned. But then it's funny, you can't tell anybody. Right. Yeah. So I didn't tell anyone except for my husband and my mother. Yes. It was such a privilege and super fun. And I got to be in the green room with Pierce Brosnan.
Oh, a little Remington Steele. Yeah.
Yes, who is even more beautiful in person. And I have to say this because when I was going out to the plaza and he was coming in after his deal, because we had chatted in the group, we guess bonded a little bit. He looks at me, he stands in my way, and he goes, "Be bold, be beautiful." I was like, "Be bold, be beautiful." I was like, "Yes, sir. Yes, I'll try my best."
Oh my God. And what did you wear? And did you have to like choose your own outfit, or did they like help you?
No, you had to choose your own outfit. I bought a bunch of silk shirts last year, and really enjoyed that excuse.
Okay.
But no, they'll do your makeup. Yeah, fortunately.
This is what we need to know.
Yeah. I had to ask for my makeup to be done.
Oh.
Yeah, and I went in looking what I thought looked good, but then once I had the makeup done, I was like, oh, thankfully, I'm so glad I asked.
Yeah, because you're sitting next to her who has like
a lot of makeup.
Yeah, a lot of makeup.
We
needed that information. Very exciting. Okay, so should we open it up for questions? I feel like probably people have a lot.
Sure.
I can feel that energy. So now that we got the TV out of the way, Heather is coming with a microphone for you. Oh.
Oh, thanks. Hi, I'm just wondering if we're going to see a movie or a series.
I wish. It has been around at a lot of studios and no bites so far. Every time I've been down this road a couple of times. Hollywood is so capricious. I remember after Schroder, someone was like, "Okay, Brad Pitt wants to play it," and I was like, "Oh my God, my life is gonna change," and it just nothing comes out of it. For a while, I was so happy. There was this Michelle, what's her name? Yeoh, to play Bev, which would have been so perfect, but then she was like, and moved on to another project.
Or she just flits through it.
I don't know how it happens. I think that there's just a very different standard for like truth in Hollywood, or like, what people say is you have to take with a big grain of salt. I would love it. It would be, it'd be a great movie. I will say, and I don't know if this sounds to you guys, but people have told me, it falls in between kind of genres. It's not like the small indie movie that you could make with a low budget, nor is it like a Marvel movie that you need billions of dollars, and that the movie industry doesn't have a lot of middle ground there, unfortunately.
But you never know. Like sometimes something comes out and it's like, oh, I read that book 10 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Sea Wife got very close to becoming a movie. They made, the writers were husband and wife, which was so cool. And they wrote a whole pilot and everything. And then last minute, it was like Apple TV chose another show instead of, it's heartbreaking. Brad Pitt, you don't know what you missed.
I think it's more of a comment, actually. I thought it was so interesting and I guess commendable the way you conveyed her suffering, beginning to starve, and but you didn't overdo it, in my humble opinion, where you didn't make it too gruesome, but you conveyed it, but you didn't go overboard. I thought that was just interesting because it's such an intense thing that you covered, and yet you didn't. Do you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? I wanted to say, the section where she has to even decide that she's going to eat a certain thing that would just turn our stomachs. Yeah.
Yeah, she's
You
funny.
did a great.
It's that, yeah.
Yeah, we can
Dominic.
say we can say that she has to eat bugs. We can say that. Yeah. I like that comment a lot. I personally, I can speak to that a bit. When I learned a bit about survival and extremity, some things I learned about it were certain qualities that really help a person survive, and they're not what you would think, like a sense of humor. A flexibility is a big one, because if you are very attached to one certain plan, you might not see the different option or the right way out. There were stories, I read a whole book called Lost Person Behavior about like how certain people tend to be lost. Like, for example, children are very hard to find because they're completely irrational in the way they move. They move like butterflies when they're lost. Whereas somebody else, you might be like, well, they probably went that way, right? They went home or something. There were stories about like very hunters or very adept, outdoorsmen who would be lost and then cross a road and not take the road because they were overconfident in where they thought they were going, and they didn't have that flexibility in that moment to take the road, right? So, okay, one of the other qualities helps you in that moment is like presence and even wonder. And there's a line. You've read the whole book, obviously, yeah. There's a line later when Valerie's talking about this sense of a privilege of just being alive, even for this moment. And apparently this is just one of these qualities that can actually help you survive. Almost a kind of gratitude, a wonder. I think something in the book that I try to do is walk that line between the absolute beauty of nature and the danger of it, and the fear that we have as human beings when we are out there without our GPS and our machines and all these things that keep us safe, like true lostness. And of course, true lostness, physical lostness, we don't experience that much, especially not anymore, right? Because we do have our GPS, and I use mine personally all the time. But we totally understand lostness on a psychological level. We might not know what it's like to be out in the middle of the woods and lost, but we know what it's like to be lost emotionally, psychologically, to be lost in our ethics, in our relationships, our careers, So I think in that sense, I really, I wanted you, even though what's happening to Valerie is so unusual, to understand maybe a little bit about how that feels and to relate to that, and to also think about feeling found, feeling lost and feeling found, being found. And they go hand in hand. So, yeah.
Did you read the book A Marriage at Sea about that?
No, but I want
but
to.
Yeah, you should, because it's this married couple that's lost at sea, and it's like how she has these qualities that you're describing and he doesn't, but he
Interesting.
says that's how they stayed alive. Exactly what you're saying.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about Valerie's husband. In some respects, it almost seemed like you were making it seem that he would be a suspect of some sort. and I don't know. I just never got a great picture of him. But what is your view of him? What was your view of him?
Yeah, sure. Can I talk about this without spoiling it?
I mean, I think he there's a question about how solid their marriage is,
Yeah,
I think. I think it's not, yeah.
Yeah. Well, he definitely is a suspect, right? And at the beginning, and I think it was in one of those little tip line, the one from the psychic, where the psychic is like, I know where her body is. Sadly, she's dead. And the PS is, I think the husband did it,
Because usually the husband did it.
Well,
Yeah.
and oftentimes that is right. So, but then Lena later says, oh, it can't be the husband. That's too much of a trope. That's like a cliche.
He's saying that to you.
Yeah. So I will tell you, I can say this. I myself did not know who was guilty as I was writing the book. I did not know how Valerie became lost and whether there was a crime involved or not, and if it was a crime, who the criminal was. So from my point of view, it was him. It could have been him. And so he was a little sus, as the young people say. Why is he acting like he is? Why is he so unhelpful? And then later we find out a little bit more about what's going on for him under the surface. Again, it was like a puzzle, and he's a piece of the puzzle. And, you don't know till the very end which one of those puzzle pieces is a red herring and which one is right. Yeah.
Just speaking on the relationship between the husband and the wife, you use I think it's treasure, I can't remember, but you use a specific language about how they refer to each other, and I was just wondering how that became even something.
Oh, that's a great question. I actually have an answer for it. I have a colleague who calls his wife his beloved. It's a little irritating.
Okay, yeah.
I'm like, wait, what's your relation? What? And so I couldn't use that because I didn't want to
He might read it.
So
yeah.
you say, I'm like, I took the idea treasure, and this is we call each other treasure. That's where I got it.
I have a question about Lena, because you talked a little bit about what a funny sense of humor she has, and I was so amazed at how well she was surfing the internet and talking to all these different people. Can you talk a little bit about how her character evolved?
Oh yeah, totally. Can I ask you? Was she like a character you liked?
Oh yeah, I loved her.
Okay.
Well, because I'm almost her age, and I was like, wow, maybe I can do that.
You're not her age.
Almost.
Yeah, I find Lena's a character that I really love to talk to people about, because some people like really strongly really like her, and other people really dislike her, and it's like, I don't have any sympathy for her. But for me personally, it's always a mix of both, and I actually find to be her arc in the book so important, because you don't know why she's in the book for a lot of it. She's got a thematic importance, though, immediately, I think, and as her arc, she moves from a sort of lonely, lost person herself to someone who's more found, who's sort of trying to like learn how to, get along with other people and ask for help. And like pay attention to that guy who's flirting with you,
Warren.
Warren totally stole that name from a real person. Her origin was actually quite interesting, because I had to read a whole lot of self-published memoirs about hiking the AT. There's a lot. Apparently, once you hike it, you have to write a memoir about it.
And you have to self-publish
And
it.
you have self-publish it. And some of them are varying quality. Some are very good. And so you have to parse through. And I was reading readers' reviews of one of these memoirs. And it said, I am a 76-year-old woman. This is my 50th hiking memoir I've read. I love these journeys because I use a wheelchair and I can't hike myself. So I am so grateful to these people for taking me with them. That's where she came out of. Yeah. I was like, oh, cool. Yeah,
I love the research that because we didn't talk about research, but I like this type of research I can handle, going on the internet and reaching comments. But you did a lot of research.
Yeah, I did. But people, you find bits and pieces in the strangest little corners of life. And I like to think like a novelist is like a crow, a scavenger, a crow. You're picking, oh, that's shiny. I'm gonna go take that. Yeah, and I'll figure out how it's relevant, later. A friend of mine gave me a T-shirt that says, "Be careful, or I'll put you in my novel." It was a great gift.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. I really enjoyed the story and all its unfolding. So you've mentioned your research several times, and I guess I had a follow-up question to that. If you could speak for a few moments about your process. Like, you had the idea, and then you dedicated how long to research and then started writing, or did you kind of research as the story evolved, or some of both?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's a sort of a hot mess at the beginning. So I'm kind of blindly. I'm not. It's not methodical, but I definitely have to start with a bunch of reading. For sure. And there is, like I'm saying, these self-published memoirs, you can learn about anything. Somebody wrote a book about it, and they're going to completely tell you everything in that book. And that's my first stage. And then my second stage of research is usually finding a person, a real person, who is going to have the patience and generosity to answer all my dumb questions, right? So one of the parts that was very hard to learn about was search and rescue and being a warden. I mean, wardens are basically like police officers of the woods. I didn't know anything about this. I was totally intimidated by trying to get that right. So I did send an email to the guy on the website, Lieutenant Cross, and I was like, I'm a novelist. I would love to maybe come up and meet you guys and go around. And lo and behold, he writes back like the next day. He's like, sure, come on up. We'll meet you. And I drove up to Maine several times during the research. Once during mud season, which was a mistake, but when I went up there the first time and I met him, he introduced me to his colleague, Josh. And he said, you can go on a ride along with Josh. And as Josh and I were driving around, so it's a large part of what they do is just drive around looking to see if anyone needs help, and checking licenses and things like that. And then it turns out, and he was telling me stories, he was on the search for Jerry. And what a large part of what he wanted to talk about was how it felt to not be able to find her. And, that's the part of research you don't go looking for that. I mean, that was a moment of kismet that oh, wow, that I'm actually talking with somebody who was there in this story that kind of inspired me. But you go looking for one thing and you find something else completely. So I did not expect to be hearing about that. And it's also little details, like I went on a ride along with a young woman, which was so important because there aren't that many women, though that's it's changing a bit. And she was eating she had her lunch on her lap, and it was like Tupperware, it was like cherry tomatoes and pieces of cheese, and she's just eating and talking and driving and stopping and yelling, and something about that Tupperware with the lunch was exactly what I needed to see. And you're not going to find that in a book, So, yeah, sure, I asked them and they told me tons of stories and all of this. I didn't use any of the stories specifically, but again, I use their spirit and make up my own, my own story. Yeah. And of course, you owe a real debt to people who kind of, I really wanted to get it right, after spending that much time with them.
Yeah, did you hear from anyone like you got this really right or you got this wrong? Did anyone in the reading, have you come across anyone?
It's funny. I do get emails from readers who tell me that I got things wrong, but they're really small.
Oh, yeah.
They're really small. And I'm like, if that's your biggest problem, I'm okay. I am really curious about some of the wardens and what they might think of the book, but I don't think they've read it. But Mainers, I've gotten comments from Mainers saying, "Oh, you got Maine right." I was very nervous about that because Mainers are very possessive.
Well, I read that you made Bev be from Massachusetts because you didn't feel that you could actually write a Mainer.
Yes, I made her a masshole. Yeah.
Anyone
There's
else?
a question here. Yeah, well, there's a couple questions.
I'm coming.
I'm just wondering if you're working on anything now that you can tell us about what your next project might be.
Oh yeah, thanks. I am. It's so funny. When I finish a book, I feel like really confident. I'm like, I have mastered the genre. That lasts for like a week. And then when I start something else, I'm like, a drunk on a unicycle. Like I don't even know how to control anything, even a sentence. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. I do have a great idea. I have done some research about it, about a woman who runs a dog sledding tourism outfit in Vermont or New Hampshire. I'm going around New England here. I'm excited about that. And I would love to write a novel in which dogs feature prominently. Right? We love dogs, don't we?
Don't die. The dogs don't die.
Oh, I can't tell you that. And I certainly can't promise that no dogs are going to die. But people have such strong emotions about their dogs. I do too. I do too. But the dogs I've gotten to know a bit in some of my research, it's incredible how different they are, how much personalities these working dogs have. And they have friendships and enemies and grudges and weird neuroses. It's really cool. I don't know why. I haven't really figured out why I'm attracted to this. This is kind of that aboutness I'm still thinking about. But something, an aboutness that I'm really interested in is technology and how especially our attention has been so fractured by our life on screens, and especially kids. And how we can kind of battle out of that space and become present to nature again, and maybe perhaps learn from animals. So I think I might have a youngish character in there as well. Yeah.
Can you hold on 1 second so everyone can hear you?
You said something earlier about the process, I think you said, I wasn't quite sure where it was going to go, or it's almost like you're channeling while you're writing. And I'm wondering if novelists or you or anybody, sometimes just the process, whether they might initially say, like, come up with the story and the creativity ahead of time, saying, I want this, I want this, I want this, I want them to do this, and then flesh it out, versus you've got the characters, but you're not quite sure where they're going. I just wonder if there's something about that for novelists in terms of how they approach it.
Yeah, I would love to hear Daisy on that one. Do you know where everything's going and how it's gonna go when you start?
Well, I've only written one book, so I'm trying to write a second one. I have not had the experience of knowing where it's going. I mean, you kind of start, I guess, with like a premise, and then I have had the experience where I will start writing into something and it'll be like, no, this is not okay. I'm going to turn this car around and go somewhere else. Even if you've written into something for a while. And I've also had the experience where I'm writing something and all of a sudden a character just appears. I'm like, oh, I didn't know he was going to show up in a rainbow wig and, just be, or you realize that one character you're writing about actually, oh, but that's going to be the same character. Like I have to find it on the page, which is very long, I think, and kind of messy. And what you were saying about not really knowing exactly what happened to Valerie when you started writing, I do relate to that, which I think, I have talked to people who have husbands who are not writers, and I have a husband who's not a writer, and he'd be like, I don't know how you could write something and not know exactly what's going to happen. And first when he would say that to me, I would think, God, he's right. I must be doing this completely wrong. And now that he's wonderful, so it's not like a dig at him, but he just really didn't understand how you wouldn't know, right, what happened to Valerie. But that makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, so there's I believe it's Robert Frost who said, no tears for the writer, no tears for the reader, no surprise for the writer, no surprise for the reader. So I think we're just kind of living by that, which is like, well, if I'm not surprised, how are you going to be surprised? If I'm not feeling it, how am I going to make you feel it? I really have to kind of house that or embody that first in order to like convincingly deliver it. And you can tell when it's fake, right? You can tell when there's like the author isn't feeling it. And I don't want to do that. Yeah, life seems kind of too precious. Yeah.
Well, it seems like we're, okay, one more. Hold on one second. Hold.
You have such a great voice. Would you ever do Valerie in an audiobook? I've listened to Barbara Kingsolver. I actually read and listen to books at the same time, and sometimes because I don't remember things as well as I used to, so it's very helpful. But I would love to hear you do the whole book, just Valerie. Have somebody else do Bev or...
You're tapping into like the career I wish I had, ever had. I was going to be on the radio. I want to interview people on the radio. Hey, Daisy.
We could be
Welcome.
on a podcast. But yeah, some novelists usually don't read their own books, but sometimes they do. And
They do. I know, right? They do that with nonfiction a lot. Yeah. So the audiobook exists and it's brilliant. And so it's already been done. The Justine Loop plays Valerie. You know who she is? Is she on Succession or is it Succession?
She was on
She's the
Succession.
blonde. She's on Nobody Wants This.
The sister.
Oh.
Yeah.
When I was just listening to it recently, I was like, oh my God, what an honor
really good. Yeah,
to have her voice it. Because some of it's hard to speak. There's like some complex words and fragment sentences. She just mastered. She's just beautiful. And the guy who plays Santo has become like friends. I've become like Instagram friends. And he just got nominated for an Audie, which is the Audible for that role.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, we didn't
It's
talk
so
about him.
Good. Yeah.
Santo.
Yeah,
Great.
and I think reading it, and I know I've heard a lot of readers who will listen to it and then maybe get the book, wanting to read the book, or vice versa. Yeah, buy it in every form you could possibly own.
Well, that's
it's great in large print too.
Ebooks and everything.
Well, that's a good segue because everyone can come buy a book. So let's give Amity and Daisy a big round of applause. Thank you so much.